I work as a cashier at a sandwich shop. It's not a bad job, just repetitive. I've been here for about a year now, and while I wouldn't call my coworkers my friends, we get along well enough. Well, most of us. Sarah, one of the other cashiers, broke her wrist last week after slipping on some ice. She showed up to work in a bright blue cast, and everyone was sympathetic. It was an obvious injury, something you could see and understand immediately. My own wrist problems aren't as visible. When I was 14, I was diagnosed with tendinitis in both wrists. Most of the time, it doesn't bother me unless I overuse my hands. But recently, I've been doing a lot of embroidery. It's my hobby, my way to relax. But after weeks of sewing, my right wrist started flaring up badly. At home, I wear a brace when it gets bad, but at work, I usually just deal with the pain. It's not like anyone would notice, and I didn't want to make a big deal about it. But yesterday, the pain was unbearable. Simple tasks like pressing buttons on the register sent sharp stabs up my arm. I knew I had to wear my brace at work, even if I felt weird about it. So when my shift started, I strapped it on and went in. I wasn't expecting anyone to care. After all, my wrist hurting had nothing to do with Sarah's injury. I wasn't looking for attention. I just wanted to get through my shift without feeling like my hand was on fire. Then Lisa noticed, and that's when everything started. I had barely set my bag down in the break room when I felt Lisa's eyes on me. She was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite place, somewhere between annoyance and disbelief. "What is that for?" she asked, her voice sharp. I glanced down at my wrist, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "Oh, I have tendinitis. It flared up, so I need to wear this for a bit." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Tendinitis?" "Yeah, I've had it since I was a teenager. It's usually fine, but I've been doing a lot with my hands lately, and now it's acting up." I kept my tone light, not wanting to make a big deal out of it. She scoffed. "Right." Then she turned and walked away like I had just told her I was faking an injury. I sighed and pushed the interaction aside. Lisa had never liked me much, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe she just didn't like my face, or maybe she had decided early on that we weren't going to get along. Whatever the reason, I wasn't in the mood to deal with it today. The thing was, Sarah, the one with the actual broken wrist, hadn't even commented on my brace. She was busy working at the other register, joking with another coworker like nothing had changed. If she didn't have a problem with it, why should Lisa? I shook it off and started my shift, focusing on getting through the next few hours without thinking too much about Lisa's attitude. But it turned out she wasn't done making me feel uncomfortable, not even close. As the shift went on, I couldn't shake the feeling of Lisa's eyes on me. Every time I glanced in her direction, she was either staring or whispering to another coworker. Her expression was always the same, like she had caught me in a lie. At one point, I was ringing up a customer when I noticed her watching me from the sandwich prep station. She didn't even bother to look away when I met her gaze. Instead, she narrowed her eyes slightly, then turned back to what she was doing, shaking her head. I tried to ignore it. I wasn't doing anything wrong. My wrist hurt. I needed the brace. That should have been the end of it. But Lisa wasn't letting it go. When the rush died down, she walked past me and muttered, "Convenient timing." I blinked. "What?" She stopped and turned to face me fully. "Your wrist. Funny how it only acts up when Sarah's in a cast." My mouth opened, but nothing came out for a second. Was she serious? "Lisa, I've had tendinitis for years. It flares up sometimes. This isn't about Sarah." She crossed her arms. "Right. Just seems weird that you never wore it before now." I exhaled sharply, frustration bubbling up. Because I was trying to tough it out. But the pain got worse, so I put the brace on. That's it. Lisa didn't respond. She just stared at me for another second, then turned and walked away. I could feel my face heating up, not just from anger, but from embarrassment. It was one thing to be annoyed by someone. It was another to have them actively act like you were making something up. And the worst part? This wasn't even the last comment she was going to make. The rest of my shift dragged on, with Lisa finding every opportunity to make her feelings clear. She didn't say much outright, but the looks, the whispers, the exaggerated sighs whenever she walked past me, it all added up. At first, I thought maybe Sarah would have something to say about it. I mean, she was the one with an actual broken wrist. If anyone had a reason to be annoyed, it would be her, right? But Sarah didn't care. At one point, when we were both at the registers, she glanced at my brace and asked, "What happened?" I gave her the quick version: tendinitis, embroidery, flare-up, brace. She just nodded. "That sucks. My brother has that. Hope it calms down soon." Then she went right back to scanning receipts. No judgment, no weird looks, nothing. That should have been the end of it. But Lisa kept making her presence known. During a lull, when I was refilling napkins at the condiment station, she walked up behind me and said, just loud enough for me to hear, "Must be nice." I turned. "Excuse me?" Lisa gave a fake little smile. "Must be nice to have an injury you can take off whenever you want." I clenched my jaw. "It's not an injury. It's a chronic condition. And yeah, I can take the brace off, but that doesn't mean my wrist magically stops hurting." Lisa shrugged like she wasn't convinced. Still, kinda convenient. I stared at her, trying to understand what her problem was. Sarah didn't care. The managers didn't care. So why did Lisa? And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about Sarah's broken wrist. It was about Lisa and whatever issue she had with me. I tried to brush Lisa off. I really did. But the longer the shift went on, the harder it got to ignore her. Every time I looked up, there she was, watching me like I had done something wrong. Whenever I adjusted my brace or flexed my fingers to ease the stiffness, I could feel her eyes burning into me. At one point, I went to grab a cup from the stack, and Lisa, standing a few feet away, let out an exaggerated sigh. I turned my head just in time to see her roll her eyes before looking away. I felt my stomach twist with frustration. If she had something to say, why not just say it? But no, Lisa preferred the passive-aggressive route. A little while later, I was restocking the chip shelf when another coworker, Matt, came over. "Hey, what's up with Lisa?" he asked in a low voice. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "She keeps making faces every time she looks at you." I exhaled sharply. "Yeah, I noticed." Matt hesitated. "Is it because of the brace?" I glanced down at my wrist and flexed my fingers. "Apparently." He scoffed. "That's stupid." "Yep." He gave me a sympathetic look before heading back to his station. It was nice to know I wasn't imagining things, but it didn't make Lisa's behavior any less irritating. By the time we reached the last hour of the shift, I was exhausted, not from the work, but from the tension. And just when I thought I'd made it through the worst of it, Lisa decided to throw in one last jab. I had been holding it together all shift, but by the time my break rolled around, I needed a minute to breathe. My wrist was throbbing, my patience was wearing thin, and Lisa's constant judgment was starting to get to me. I went to the bathroom, not just because I needed to, but because I needed a moment away from her. The brace made some things more difficult, so I took it off while I was in there. After washing my hands, I stood at the sink, flexing my fingers and rubbing the sore muscles in my wrist. The relief was temporary, but at least it was something. I reached for the brace and started strapping it back on when the door opened. Of course, it was Lisa. She barely looked at me at first, just walked to the sink and started fixing her hair. But then she glanced down at my wrist and smirked. "Must be nice," she said casually. I frowned. "What?" Lisa turned to face me fully. "Being able to take it off whenever you want." I stared at her, trying to process what she was implying. "Lisa, I wear it because my wrist hurts. Taking it off doesn't make the pain go away." She gave a small, mocking shrug. "Still, kinda lucky, don't you think?" Something about the way she said it, Like I had chosen this, like I was somehow faking or exaggerating, sent a surge of irritation through me. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Lisa, I don't know what your problem is, but my wrist hurting has nothing to do with Sarah. I'm just trying to get through my shift. She didn't respond, just gave me one last pointed look before turning and walking out. I stared at the door after she left, my hands clenched into fists. I wasn't trying to compete with Sarah. I wasn't looking for attention. I just wanted to get through the damn day without feeling like a fraud. And yet, somehow, Lisa had managed to make me feel guilty for something I couldn't control. By the time I got back to my station, Lisa's words were stuck in my head. Must be nice. Kinda lucky, don't you think? I knew she was being ridiculous, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. Was it weird that I was wearing a brace while Sarah had a broken wrist? Did it look like I was trying to get sympathy? I went through the motions of my job, but my mind kept replaying every look Lisa had given me, every sarcastic little comment. At one point, I caught a glimpse of Sarah at the other register. She was laughing with a customer, completely unbothered. If she didn't care, why did Lisa? More importantly, why was I letting Lisa get to me? Still, the doubt lingered. As my shift neared its end, I started debating whether I should just stop wearing the brace at work. It wasn't like I needed it 24/7. Maybe I could just deal with the pain for a few hours and avoid the drama altogether. But then, another thought crept in. Why should I have to? Lisa wasn't my boss. She wasn't my doctor. She had no right to decide whether my pain was valid or not. But even as I told myself that, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, she was right. As I was finishing up my closing tasks, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see Rachel, another coworker, giving me a knowing look. "You good?" she asked. I hesitated. "Yeah, just tired." Rachel didn't look convinced. She glanced at my wrist brace. "It's about Lisa, isn't it?" I sighed. "She's been weird all shift, keeps making comments like I'm faking or something." Rachel rolled her eyes. "Lisa's always like that. She picks someone to fixate on and makes their life hell for no reason." I frowned. "So it's not just me?" "Oh, definitely not," she said. "Last month, she was all over Matt for taking a sick day. Before that, she was mad at Jamie for getting extra hours. She just likes to have something to complain about." That actually made me feel a little better. Still, maybe I should just stop wearing the brace at work. It's not worth the drama. Rachel gave me a pointed look. "Is your wrist still hurting?" "Yeah," I admitted. "Then wear it," she said simply. "Lisa doesn't get to decide if your pain is real. She's not a doctor." I let out a small laugh. "I was just thinking that." Rachel smirked. "Then you already know the answer. Screw Lisa." I nodded, feeling a little lighter. Maybe Lisa was just looking for something to be mad about. Maybe this had nothing to do with me at all. Either way, I wasn't about to let her make me feel guilty for taking care of myself. The next day, as I was getting ready for work, I stood in front of my dresser, staring at my wrist brace. The pain was still there, duller than yesterday, but definitely not gone. I flexed my fingers, testing the stiffness, and winced slightly. I knew what I should do. Rachel had been right. Lisa wasn't a doctor. She wasn't my boss. She wasn't even someone whose opinion I valued. And yet, the thought of walking into work and seeing her judgmental stare again made my stomach twist. I picked up the brace, turning it over in my hands. Would it be easier to just not wear it? To avoid the glares, the comments, the whole situation? But then I thought about how much it had helped yesterday, how much worse my wrist would feel if I pushed through another shift without it. I fastened the straps and flexed my fingers again. It wasn't a competition. I wasn't trying to take attention away from Sarah. I was just doing what I needed to do. Lisa could think whatever she wanted. I wasn't about to suffer just to make her feel better. I walked into work that day with my wrist brace on, ready for whatever looks or comments Lisa had in store. but to my surprise, she barely reacted. Maybe she had moved on to something else to be mad about. Maybe she had finally realized how ridiculous she was being. Or maybe, just maybe, she had never actually cared that much. It was just another excuse to be petty. Either way, I didn't let it get to me. I did my job, took care of my wrist, and ignored whatever passive-aggressive energy Lisa was throwing my way. By the end of my shift, the doubt was gone. I wasn't faking, I wasn't overreacting, and I definitely wasn't competing with Sarah. But Lisa's behavior still stuck with me. The way she acted like I was trying to steal attention, like my pain wasn't real because it wasn't as visible as Sarah's. And it made me wonder, was I actually in the wrong for wearing my brace at work? Was it insensitive, even if Sarah didn't care? Or was Lisa just looking for a reason to make me feel bad? What do you think? Am I the asshole?